I mentioned one particular bird that had started singing earlier, and that is the dunnock. The dunnock is a very small, quintessential little brown job bird, quite easy to overlook and to miss if you have them, in a garden or under bird feeders. They scuttle around on the floor quite a lot. They're brown and grey mottled. You could easily mistake them for a house sparrow. Indeed, they are known as hedge sparrows, even though they're not proper sparrows. And they're just funny little birds. And for years, they were overlooked. They were just seen as like a really average, normal, standard garden bird. And that was until people started studying the sex life of the dunnock. And it turns out it's actually quite wild. So dunnocks, depending on their local situation and depending on the territories that they've got knocking about, you can have situations where you have a typical monogamous pair, so a male and a female couple up, mate, produce a brood, raise it, happily ever after. You also have situations where a single male can have a couple of females, so he can mate with 2 different females or maybe more and raise a couple of different broods. Now obviously that's quite hard work for him because it involves, first of all, a lot of mating. Dunnocks can mate up to 100 times a day. Each time it's only lasting for like a fraction of a second or a couple of seconds. So there's a lot of mating to do, and then there's a lot of parenting to do. If you've got 2 nests that you're provisioning, that's a lot of food you've got to gather, that's a lot of beaks that you've got to keep fed. But the other thing that happens with dunnocks is you will get one female who mates with 2 or more males. It can be several. And you can get to the point where a single female dunnock has got a brood of chicks that has multiple fathers. So she will find different males within her area, perhaps if she's on the edge of several territories. She'll mate with each of those males, perhaps hundreds of times, over the course of a few days as she builds up her clutch. And then those males will each look after that nest as if it's simply his own. He's the father of the entire brood. So she gets lots of extra help. She really benefits from this arrangement. Now, over the evolution of the dunnock, the males have kind of cottoned onto this. And so they've developed a strategy to try and prevent other males from mating with the female that they've managed to pair with. And that is where the concept of cloacal pecking comes in. Now, cloacal pecking is the pecking of the cloaca. The cloaca is it's an all-purpose orifice on a bird. It's the place where they defecate from. It's the place where if they're a female, they lay eggs from. It's the place where they mate from. So if one female has been mating with a male dunnock, perhaps those 100 times in a day or whatever, and she meets another male, if he suspects that she's already mated with a male, he can start cloacal pecking, basically pecking at her cloaca. And he'll do this for ages until it's basically swollen and pink. If you've ever seen this, it's really quite obscene to watch. And eventually she'll actually eject her rival's sperm. So she'll cast out the sperm from her previous matings, and instead then she will mate with the new male, and hopefully he will become the father of her offspring. What he doesn't know is that she also mated with that male the day before, and she'll probably do it again the day after. So she still benefits from this arrangement, but it's just really fascinating, gross and weird and wonderful piece of behaviour from the humble dunnock and its sex life, which I just find absolutely brilliant.
Robins are one of the few birds that sing right through the year. Their song is bold and confident, especially for such a small bird.
In my own naivety, I did start kind of whistling and trying to copy the things that it was doing, and also its kind of mannerism. And it looked at me like, "You're an idiot. Like, what are you doing?" And so I just had to park it and go, "No, it's fine. Let's just sit here in silence."
Here to help us listen more closely is our resident birder, the composer and nature beatboxer, Jason Singh.
In terms of its calls, that's kind of different because they're very short, sharp sort of pulses of sounds. Different birds have come into my life, both physically as birds themselves, but also through literature and other sort of creative outputs. And it's really weird because, like, I'd say birds have also helped me find my voice. And I guess in terms of like sharing through performance or teaching through workshops, engaged young people in like, oh, there's this guy who's a beatboxer and he does the sounds of birds, to kind of inspire other people to listen to their environment, but also to develop and enhance these connections with themselves through their voices. Better, deeper. Birdsong is such a powerful way of doing that. I had a residency at Dartington, and there's a really beautiful garden. And when I first moved to Devon, and I went and sat in this garden, and I was sat there, and just there was lots of things going on, and this robin came and sat literally right next to me, like almost sort of interacting like a sort of companion and like a friend, like looking from side to side, just sat there on the end of like, yeah, I'm here. I'm just here with you, mate. Don't worry. And it was I'd never encountered a bird so close. And at the time of the stuff that I was kind of going through, it was actually felt really poignant that, my gosh, this bird has just come and sat right next to me, and like was actually interested, So I told the robin my problems. It's the rhythm of the chiff chaff. Notice how I do that with my hand, because I'm mimicking the sound of a turntable, of a record scratching.
Chiff chaffs are tiny birds, but once you've heard them, you start noticing them everywhere. Here to help us listen more closely is our resident birder, the composer and nature beatboxer, Jason Singh.
Interestingly enough, where I live, there's loads of birds, blackbirds and swans and magpies and wrens and a whole manner of things. And there's this one bird, and the rhythm of it just like stuck out, and identified it using my app. Found out it was the chiff chaff, and it's, of all the birds that I hear around me, this is the one that reminds me of turntablism and DJ culture and scratching. And that is how I identify the rhythm of that bird and the musicality of that bird through this. So there is a technique called scratching in DJing, where you put your hand on the record and you bring it backwards and forwards, and you can create rhythms and melodies. You literally push the record forward and then you pull the record back. So push and pull, push and pull. A lot of the time, I don't hear chiff chaff in the call of the chiff chaff. For me, it's not called the chiff chaff, it's called the baby scratch. From my earliest memories of birds, the blackbird is up there. When I was in school, I had a lot of issues in secondary school with learning, attention. So I used to just sort of sit there in my English class, and I used to zone out to this blackbird that was nesting in a tree just outside the classroom. And just the melody, it just used to just tune me right in and tune me right out of what was happening in the classroom. And I just sort of like found this place of calm and focus that I just really didn't have outside of that. And also, because of the different calls, there's the song of the blackbird, like I just did, and then there's those calls, those warning signs of like when you see it flying. And that's usually where I've seen it, is when it recognizes that I'm there or someone's there, and it just flies by. But to go from into that, yeah, it's pretty mad. I personally never get bored of or get used to the fact that I see or hear a blackbird. I'm not trying to be the blackbird. I like to be able to conjure the blackbird in that sense. I feel like what I do is that I try and practice to tune myself to the natural world. So sparrows I find really interesting, because it's so weird describing this to somebody else. They're like walnuts with beaks. So sparrows are birds that I grew up with, and I can remember that they were always in groups. And if you saw one, it was always going to be attacked by a pigeon. And it was like a tiny bird that seems to always be on edge and aware, but it's not selfish, because it's telling others as well about it. It's telling its people that, listen, there's potential danger here. So it's quite a sharing bird, because their calls are so distinct. When they're in groups. I mean, like here now in Devon, in different parts of Devon that I go, especially hedgerows, they are so loud. It's unbelievable. And they don't care. They're like, here we are, we're doing this thing, and we are here. And I love that. I love the feeling of we are here in such a tiny bird. Because sometimes it feels like, say, with robins, for instance, it's a kind of I am here. and it puffs itself up and it comes up to you and it's like, yo, listen, I'm here, I'm the robin. Whereas it feels like with sparrows, they're a crew, they're a collective, they're a we. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. We live such an individual life of like, look at me, this is what I'm doing, this is where I've been, but actually to observe nature in this kind of collective capacity, there is a relationship. So a little bit about the sound. So this little that's the kind of rhythm as I hear it. And then obviously I then go into the world of building these environments of sparrows, which sound like, well, you can hear the collective. Because it doesn't speak the same language that you speak, it's kind of like a whole other world that is open up to interpretation.
If you love birdwatching, why not join the flock, our Get Birding Members Club? Enjoy exclusive content, latest birding news, ad-free episodes, and access to community chat rooms to share tips, spots, and more with birdies around the world. Go to our website, getbird.ing.